All right. It is time to get rolling here at the Voice of College Football. We appreciate you stopping by for the best and discussion, debate, and analysis. That's what we do here each and every night, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, live with you, post game as well. And yeah, we're here for you. We've left the link there in the chat. Please give me a call. We've got a couple guests lined up as well, so we will get to them when they jump on the board. All right. It's about time to start to size up some of these conferences. I think we need to do that, and we will do that sometime soon. I have yet to go through the wins and losses for each conference and to be able to size that up on down the line. Appreciate you being here. Here we go. Let's get to the first caller. I recognize the name. Will I recognize the face? Yeah, I recognize that egghead. Yes. Corey Brad is here, everyone.
Egghead, yeah. So Iowa lost Saturday. We haven't talked about it. Iowa lost Saturday in a typical Cyhawk game that is decided by 3 points or whatever.
Yes.
So we'll talk about that tomorrow. I don't want to promote the show early, but can I ask you what happened? So I just full disclosure, we had a 4.5-hour post-game show after Cyhawk.
And Corey, before you continue, speaking of time, I do apologize because we started a little bit late. So this call can only take about 2.5 or 3 minutes because our first guest is lined up for 10:15 Eastern. But
okay, this is going to be pretty quick and painless. What happened with Minnesota Northwestern State? First of all, Minnesota had no business playing Northwestern State. But what happened at the end of that game? Because I literally have not. I didn't watch any other football this weekend because of how the Cyhawk game started so early and we went so late with the post game show. What happened at the end of that Minnesota game?
I could not tell you anything about that game. I figured I needed to check out. If I was going to check out of any game this week, it was going to be Minnesota Northwestern State, especially when I saw the score of 59-0 at halftime.
Somebody told me that there was a forfeiture at the end of the game.
Oh, I did not.
That's
hear
why
that.
I've never heard of that, and that's why I'm curious.
Okay, and if they didn't finish playing. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know that I'm just telling you that was what I heard. I've never heard of that happening. Has this happened in the modern era?
Not that I know of. There were obviously that we've heard about a few running clocks. There have been a few running clocks, and then obviously there have been weather-related items that have
right.
and ended games early.
So again, this is totally hearsay. I'm just calling because you hopped on a live, and I thought you might know this, but I'll have to have this ready for our Big Ten show tomorrow. So, disappointing week for the Big Ten. Real quick, just say that because I know you got to go. Disappointing week for the Big Ten. 2 biggest games of the week. You lose both of them, and obviously the Iowa game was a little bit closer maybe than Michigan Oklahoma. I didn't watch that one. I know you. I'm sure you did. I honestly, again, I need to do some serious digging before tomorrow. I think did Michigan State beat Boston College?
Yes.
Okay, that's I was thinking that. So that helped them a little bit. Helps them a little bit, and obviously, I mean, I don't really give Oregon a ton of. I mean, Oregon's just. I don't even know how to describe what happened there. And to me, Mike Gundy ought to be on the hot seat. I know that's probably a discussion you have had already over the last 2 days. So, but I guess those are 2 wins. I don't know if you'd call them solid wins, but they're 2 wins, and Illinois went on the road and won there too. But the 2 biggest games in the conference were dropped, so that's disappointing. But folks, we'll be live tomorrow talking Big Ten football, 6 Eastern.
Absolutely. Thanks for stopping by, Corey.
Thanks, Mark.
The great Corey Brada, again, from the Hawkeye of the Storm for your best Iowa football coverage, again, from the Hawkeye of the Storm, Corey Brada. And then we get together for double back-to-back shows Tuesday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. 5 p.m. Eastern Time. That's the Iowa show. And then 6 p.m. Eastern Time right here with the Big Ten Live show with Corey. All right, we're going to talk some Big 12 football. We've got Matthew Poston stopping by from Heartland at College Sports. Matthew, how you doing tonight?
I'm good, sir. And I'm down here in Texas. I actually went to Stephen F. Austin. Northwestern State is our rival.
Oh.
So I can answer his question. The game ended with 6:15 left because of an impending weather delay and because the Demons needed to get out of there to get back home. So they just said, yeah, we're down 66-0. We're done.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So I'm sure they have finished out similar type scores against Power Four competition. But yeah, when the weather's that menacing and you've got a long trip home and obviously the game's completely out of hand, I have no issue with that. Matthew, we do appreciate you stopping by. We'd like to talk some Big 12 football, and let's start with the status of the conference right now, with Oklahoma State going down big at Oregon. No big surprise by that, but when it's like 4 touchdowns, people kind of understand, okay, one of the worst teams in the Big 12 taking on the defending Big 10 champion. But when it's 66-3, I don't think anyone really in a power conference should lose a game by close to 10 touchdowns. Obviously, other key losses along the way. Baylor loses at home to Auburn by a couple touchdowns, although they bounce back against SMU. Kansas State's been a bit of a disappointment. And of course, Arizona State in a sense, a shocker because they made the playoff and Mississippi State was a 2-win team and no wins in the SEC. But in regards to a point spread, Vegas did not consider this to be a lopsided game, but Arizona State goes down at Starkville.
Yeah, I watched that Arizona State game, and I thought, even in it being a loss, I think it was a solid game for Arizona State because they played poorly the first half. Clearly, they were rattled by those 60,000 cowbells in Starkville, and that's a great place to watch a game if you haven't been there. But the way they were able to bounce back in the second half, the way they were able to just completely flip their game plan and go to the run. Kanye Udo transferred in from Army. I think he's going to be their starting running back by midseason. He has that Cam Scatterbo kind of quality and that he can hit a hole and run. He's not the pass catcher that Cam was last year, but in terms of being that one-cut runner that Arizona State used so effectively last year, he can be that kind of guy for them. And they used Raleek Brown effectively during that game. And, I thought even in a loss, it was a gritty kind of performance for Arizona State that to me just kind of reinforces that they're still probably the best team in this conference in terms of how they're playing right now, followed by Iowa State. They go to Ireland, they beat Kansas State, they come back home, they dominate their FCS opponent. They beat Iowa in a game that, like your gentleman before said, typical Cy-Hawk game. A very typical close Iowa State game. And right now, those two teams, they kind of seem like, to me, they're playing the best in the conference given who they've played to this point.
Yeah, so when we look at Kansas State, the thing that people have to remember about Kansas State, obviously, is they just lost the one game in conference. So even though they look bad the next week against an FCS opponent, even though they lose against Army, which was unexpected, nobody went haywire after losing to Iowa State, a quality team, by 3 points in Dublin. Iowa State was clearly the better team, but Kansas State was certainly a worthy opponent, and it was a decent game. They've still only lost one game in the conference. So we've seen Kansas State hang in there, and they have been the one constant in the Big 12 throughout all these years.
Yeah, and that's why I think their game with Arizona is so interesting this Friday night. One, it's a non-conference game. Don't let anybody fool you. That is a non-conference game because before Arizona joined the Big 12, Kansas State and Arizona had a 2-year game agreement. So they just decided to honor it as a non-conference game as opposed to cancel it. So, Arizona's played 2 lopsided games against Hawaii and I think Weber State on Saturday. They've looked better, but they really haven't had the opportunity to test themselves against anybody like Kansas State. Kansas State dominated this game a year ago in Manhattan. It was also on a Friday night. They really need a get-right game. Even though it's not a conference game, they need a get-right game against Arizona because I don't think they definitely don't want to be going into conference play in a week or two with a 3-game losing streak. They've got some things to fix on both sides of the football. Their defense definitely has not been where it was a year ago. I like what Chris Kleeman's able to do with his staff and his scheme, but They need to get right on the road on Friday night against Arizona. It just hasn't been an effective team overall the first 3 weeks of the season.
Yeah, we got Matthew Postins here breaking down the Big 12 for us from Heartland College Sports. We appreciate Matthew stopping by. Pitt at West Virginia. We didn't even mention West Virginia is one of the villains of Big 12 football here early in the season. They go to Ohio. Iowa State suffered the same.
They did 2 years
fate
ago.
A couple years ago, going to Ohio, and that was a pretty good Cyclones team. And West Virginia goes down in that one in Athens, but they've got the backyard brawl, and obviously for themselves, they can salvage a lot of pride there, but also for the Big 12. I don't know that the conference really has enough games to kind of salvage the perspective of a national audience, but just your thoughts about this West Virginia football team, obviously with Rich Rod back.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a lot of excitement around that program, but I think it's definitely tempered not just by the loss to Ohio, but the fact that Jaheim White, their running back, very talented running back, is out for a while with an injury. So they're really going to have to think about, how much more they're going to have to throw the football against Pitt on Saturday, and really moving forward, they're going to have to sell out to the pass a little bit more than I think they wanted to this year. This game, throw out all the rules. I covered this game in person last year when I was up in Pittsburgh, and it's a fantastic atmosphere. They've got two great fan bases. That stadium is going to be rocking in Morgantown on Saturday. And, it could be one of those games that goes right down to the wire. It really doesn't matter that West Virginia is 1-1 or only wins against an FCS team. It's one of those games where you throw all that out and you usually end up with a great game. Pitt won this game last year, but West Virginia, they were able to run the football really well on Pittsburgh. That's why losing Jaheim White is such a big deal for them Saturday. They're not going to have that weapon that they're going to be able to tap into in the run game against Pitt.
And then we finally get some, besides the one in Dublin, obviously, the Big 12 gets to some conference play. Colorado at Houston coming up on a Friday night. And then one of these odd, and correct me if I'm wrong here, because the conference has done this a few times in recent years with the influx from the Four Corner schools from the old Pac-12. And this has happened in the ACC where they're looking for a quality non-conference game, and they actually schedule a conference opponent to play an in-conference game, but Kansas State's taking on Arizona, and that was a non-conference game last year, and I believe it is once again this year. So people mark that off of your Big 12 slate in regards to counting for conference games. But yeah, Dion and Colorado going to Houston, and the Cougars, we have yet to see it against a quality opponent, but they're supposed to be better this year.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually saw Houston in person a couple of weeks ago because my alma mater went down to play them. We lost 27-0. But I was actually spending a lot more time watching Houston, if we're being honest. I think Colorado's got a good chance to win this game because I just wasn't impressed with Connor Wigman at quarterback for Houston. The thing that really kind of stood out to me was that he wasn't going through a lot of progressions as they were going through that game. He was making a lot of first read throws. There were only a couple of times during that game that you could really tell he went through his first, second, third progression to make a throw. And usually when he did that, good things happened for Houston. Now, granted, it was the first game of the year. We were an FCS opponent. You're not necessarily going to throw out everything in your playbook that week, but it really it's one of those things that stood out. And when you're going to play a better defense like Colorado that has, better cover corners, better safeties, better pass rushers, you're going to have to be able to go through your progressions first, second, third, and do it quickly. And I didn't see him do that very well against Stephen F. Austin. They've got a quality group of running backs. I like their run defense, but the quarterback position is going to make or break Houston when it comes to that game on Saturday.
Yeah, Matthew Poston stopping by to break down the Big 12 for us. You can catch Matthew's work at Heartland College Sports. You see his X/Twitter handle right there. And then the site Heartland College Sports. How good do you think the Big 12 is? When it's all said and done, how quality is this conference? I think we can all agree, regardless of Big 12 fan or not, everyone chimes in with the stereotypical, and it is, I believe, true that from top to bottom, it's difficult to pick these games, and will be once they get into conference play, because the conference is so balanced. It makes for an exciting conference race.
It does. And it was that way last year. You had, I think, 3 teams finish in a tie for first place. Might have been 4. But parity can be good from a competitive standpoint, and parity can also be bad when you're thinking about the playoff and trying to get 2 teams in December. I think it was pretty clear last year that with both Iowa State and Arizona State getting to the championship game, that the winner of that game was going to get the automatic bid, and the loser of that game was not going to get in at all. And I think if you're the Big 12 and you're trying to get 2 teams in the playoff, which is Brett Yormark's stated goal, he wants more teams in the playoff. A couple of these teams are really going to have to rise to the top and get to that point where they've got 10, 11 wins going into that Big 12 championship, because that's going to make the committee's job a little bit easier in terms of taking both of those teams. You think about, TCU being undefeated back in 22 when they lost to Kansas State. Both of those teams had, I believe Kansas State had 9 wins going into that game, but I think pretty much everyone was expecting TCU to get in the playoff, even though they lost that game. Kansas State wins that game in a 12-team playoff. Kansas State's probably in the playoff. So while the parity is great, and you're right, it does make choosing these games and picking winners very difficult, the Big 12 does need a couple of teams to really rise up and be those 2 dominant teams, especially in conference play. Iowa State seems to have the makings of a team that can do that, because they seem to have solved their not their issues at wide receiver, but they found guys to replace the 2 big receivers they lost to the NFL last year, including Jalen Noel. And then Arizona State, I still think, can be that team as well. But right now, I just don't see a whole lot of teams right now that feel like, to me, are going to separate themselves from the rest of the conference early on, just based on what we've seen to this point. And, some of that is just, Baylor's got issues. They can score with any team in the country, but they can't seem to defend anybody right now. TCU had a really nice game against North Carolina, but they haven't played anybody else yet. So, with conference play not starting in earnest for a couple more weeks, a lot of these teams still have a lot of questions to answer.
Matthew, we appreciate you stopping by, and why don't you let people know where they can find you and what you've been working on?
Well, I cover the Big 12 for Heartland College Sports. I've been working there for about 10 years. I'm actually our basketball guy, but I help out during football season. It's tomorrow. My 5 things to watch this week will be out. We've got game previews for every game during non-conference. You can imagine how labor intensive that can be this time of year with 16 teams. But we've got football coverage every day there at the Big 12, from the articles that I write and Joe Tillery and Derek Duke to our founder and owner, Pete Mundo, and his videos throughout the week. So we've got a lot of great football coverage over there. We can't wait for conference play to start, because 1, it makes our job a little bit easier, but 2, the games always seem to get more interesting.
Matthew, appreciate you stopping by. Enjoy the football this weekend.
Hey, thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
All right. We appreciate you all being here as well. Leave those comments, questions there in the chat. We are here for 1 solid hour, unless you want us to stick around for longer, which we are happy to do. All right. Let's see who's in the chat. Jackson's here, of course, letting us know about the merch. Know about the merch, folks. The merch is quality. It's good. And we just don't have one line like the Voice of College Football. What we've got is you can go to any particular team and check out the particular team of your liking. Your favorite team most likely is there. Lisa's here. Jim here. Chris Foot is here. Bama fan, good to see you. And Chris has lined up all sorts of comments. Who knows what he's talking about? We got David Sobel as well. And one comment coming in from Alec Kieser. And fortunately, we can just go right to the source and bring in Alec to talk some Indiana football. You can catch
go.
Alec on the Indiana football show right here at the Voice of College Football on Tuesday nights.
Yeah, my question was actually about Texas Tech, because I know they spent a bunch of money and I haven't really got a chance to watch them play this year. So I was kind of curious about what the Big 12's take on them was, but I'll have to go read up on that.
Yeah. Nobody has seen Texas Tech play this year. They've played Kent State, and then they played some low-level FCS school the week before and beat them by 60. Or maybe I could say this about some other team. Maybe hardly anybody has watched play this year yet.
This is true. This is true. I felt like you were flashing the bat signal for me this week. I saw you tweet your weekly, these schools should be embarrassed, had Indiana on there, had Penn State on there, riled up the Indiana fan base a little bit. And I figured I would come on here and just kind of explain why I'm not embarrassed by this non-conference schedule and kind of get your thoughts on a couple things. But really quick, I thought I understood what your top 25, like the real top 25 was that was being released like every week. And then I saw Oregon at 12 this week, and I got to admit, I don't understand what the ranking is. So maybe you could help me understand what's coming out on the channel every week.
Yeah, so it's the top 25 that actually makes sense. And it was born out of seeing the AP poll come out every week and be not completely top to bottom, but there being obvious issues with the AP poll being based on just what certain writers thought of particular teams being good. And despite losing games, they kept them propped up, or just a litany of examples that I could go through that were completely ridiculous. I know that our buddies at College Football Nerds actually pointed out a few things in this week's AP poll that are completely ridiculous. And I forget what was on the post, but basically teams that beat other teams, and we're only 2 weeks deep into this season, that are still ranked below them despite winning the game head to head. And then you've got only one comparison between, let's say, South Carolina and Vanderbilt. They both played Virginia Tech, and Vanderbilt was much more dominant in that game. So haven't they performed better than South Carolina? And that's what I aim to do, Alec, is basically forget these are not the 25 best teams in the country. That's not what I'm aiming to do, is tell everyone who I believe are the 25 best teams in the country. My aim is to say these are the 25 best resumes to date. And so those resumes are built largely on the quality of the wins or the quality of the losses. And then basically past that, it's the performance. So it's what wins and losses. And then secondly, the schedule, the opponents, not the future schedule. That's another thing AP voters like to do, is project, but just evaluate these teams based on who they've played to date, and the quality of those teams. Now, let's be honest, there have to be some assumptions made there. So it's not a perfect ranking. I state this all the time. It's not perfect. Nobody can devise a perfect ranking when teams have played 2 games. You know, there's just no way to differentiate to a T best resume, because we have to make certain assumptions about, who is Texas beaten? They beat San Jose State. Well, if Virginia would have started the season and lost to Ohio State and then beaten San Jose State, they wouldn't be given the same latitude.
Exactly. There's no way they're ranked in the top 15, top 10,
even if they had the same exact
is.
resume. But I tried to look past the brand and just, for example, Ohio State. I thought they were, I picked them to win the national championship last year. And I thought that they were one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the country. But they had a non-conference schedule, much like Indiana's, and ripped through it at the beginning of the season. I did not have them ranked for like 4 weeks. And people were just losing their minds. Oh, you don't think Ohio State is one of the 25 best teams in the country? This is a farce. No, I do not believe that they have one of the 25 best resumes. So that's the ranking. The Oregon, I just give them a boost based on just completely annihilating and laying these 2 teams to waste.
Yeah, I figured they would be higher. That was kind of the only reason why, because I thought I had a pretty good grip on like the way you were like looking at the resumes, and for whatever reason, like I thought Oregon would be way higher up on the list.
Oh, way higher. The way you said it.
Oh yeah, I thought they'd be. Yeah, no. I'm like very, very impressed by Oregon. As somebody who maybe thought they were going to be a little bit more down coming into this year, that's a good football team. That's a really good football team.
Again, I'm not evaluating how good they are. I'm evaluating the quality of the wins. So I think I can't even say that. I was going to say I believe that they're better than the 12th best team in the country, but I don't really know that because I want to wait and see them play somebody.
Yeah, that's more than fair.
I weight quality wins higher than I do bludgeoning teams. So I don't have it in front of me, but I'm sure I have awarded other teams with narrow wins against just good teams versus what Oregon's done.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Actually, I'm glad you brought up that Ohio State championship team because they did something historic last year that I'm not sure many people caught.
Which is?
They were the team with the most transfers in the history of college football to win the national championship.
Oh, okay.
Beating out Michigan with 10. Ohio State had 11. Before that, I think the most was 3. Or in terms of like the last like 5 years, 10 years.
So let me make a prediction. That is a true statistic. I'm assuming it's a factual statistic. However, I would also say that we can be almost sure that Ohio State, with that number of 11 transfers, will have the least number of transfers of any national champion going forward.
No, actually, I'm not so sure that's the case. I think it's really hard to build camaraderie and develop chemistry within a roster when you're having like that much turnover. So I say that to
I
bring
doubt
it
if
back
there's a
to
roster in the country that has less than 11 turnovers, aside from maybe Clemson. And I'm trying to think of somebody else.
I think that the better you can make your team, like recruit through high school and build up your team, and the more you can supplement through the portal instead of bringing in the majority of your starters through the portal, I think the better off you can be. So I bring that back to Indiana, and you look at what this Curt Cignetti team is trying to do, and it's significantly less than it was last year. Last year it was 31 guys in, 38 out. This year it's 20 guys in, 27 out. So it's still double the amount of new players you're bringing in versus the team that had the most transfers to win a national title. And at the same time, if you look at the guys who transferred in for Ohio State, I think they had like 3 guys like actually play and start and be impact guys, that being Howard and Downs and Judkins. Indiana's got like 18 of those guys, maybe, or at least 10 to 15 of those guys starting and being in new roles in a new offense or a new defense and a new system. And so looking at the way Indiana's scheduled and looking at the way their roster is set up, they need these games to kind of gel as a roster and play. And if you look at the Indiana football brand, I don't think they can sustain a loss against a good opponent on the road. Like look at Arizona State. Arizona State, good football team, decent brand, but doesn't really have the history. They're kind of like this new kid on the block, much like Indiana. Goes into a tough environment against Mississippi State, loses a close game, pretty much right along where Vegas had the odds at, and they drop all the way out of the rankings. They get no respect. And while I'm of this opinion that it's non-conference is essentially preseason. Like you even go back to the 14 playoff and you look at that Ohio State team that lost to Virginia Tech and ended up making the playoffs. Like that Ohio State team didn't get penalized for losing that game early because of the brand, because people understood that that was a different football team they just saw in September than they were going to see in November, December, January. And so
I believe if you check the rankings, that Ohio State team was number 5 in the country when they played Virginia Tech, and they dropped to number 22. I think they got punished.
It punished them in the immediate short term in the eyes of the public perception. But when push came to shove, when that Ohio State team took care of business, the early loss at the beginning of the season didn't matter. I say this to say Texas losing against Ohio State, if that's their only loss of the season, or they lose a tough road game in the SEC and they're a 2-loss SEC champion, like nobody's going to be disrespecting that team come playoff time. If you look at Alabama, like say Alabama, like maybe Florida State's a good team, and Alabama goes on and they have maybe a loss to Georgia or a loss to Texas. I'm not really sure what the schedule looks like, and maybe they're a good team when it's all said and done. So I think that a lot of these early season games, as long as you have the brand to be able to withstand losing that game, and then obviously you take care of business, a lot of those teams don't even get penalized for losing these games. But if you look at a team like Indiana, if Indiana lost to a Mississippi State, that team's toast. There's no way they're making a college football playoff. So if you look at the way the program is right now versus where they're trying to get to, I think you look at this team in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, after Kurt Signetti's had 3, 4, 5 recruiting cycles, and he's now bringing in the majority of his guys through high school. Those teams should be playing Power 4 opponents, at least one more Power 4 opponent on the schedule, and the schedule should look stronger. But until that happens, when they're cycling in 20, 30 new guys, it's just hard for me to feel embarrassed when like this is literally this loading up to be the second best or arguably best season in program history.
Yeah, I just think that that the non-conference scheduling needs to be fixed across college football. And as long as programs like Indiana, and let's not leave out Penn State, Maryland, and as I listed those teams, this is what's a pretty sad statement about the Big Ten. I don't think we can find another school in the country outside the Big Ten. It's Indiana, it's Penn State, it's Maryland, it's Rutgers.
I mean, listen, you can say Georgia's non-con looks better because they play Georgia Tech, but Georgia's 3 non-con games outside of Georgia Tech are putrid.
Well, I understand that, but
and they play 8 conference games.
Marshall is not of the lowest level of some of these other schools.
Old Dominion, say what you want about Old Dominion, and I take as many shots as I possibly can at ESPN's FPI, so I can't believe I'm about to rely on that metric right now, but Old Dominion ranks above Northwestern, above Purdue in terms of ESPN's FPI. Like they're a bottom tier Big Ten team. Like that's, and they get a chance to play Virginia Tech next week. So that ODU team that Indiana beat that scared them a little bit, I think is a lot better than people are going to give them credit for. And I think that Kennesaw State team is going to give some people issues too. Now I'm not defending the strength of Indiana's schedule. That's not what I'm doing. But I'm just saying, like, the idea that this ODU team is some like Western Illinois, like they're a pretty comparable FBS team.
Well, that's something else about my rankings in particular, and just discussing college football and talking about how good these teams are and how good these games are. You mentioned Arizona State losing to Mississippi State and thinking that should not be evaluated as some horrendous loss. Well, we don't know. Most people are going to look at it in light of what Mississippi State was last year, which was horrendous, and the carryover. Now it's a different team, but it was expected to be a bad football team this year again, maybe the worst in the SEC, and Arizona State lost the game. Now Mississippi State rips off like a 7-5 year in the SEC. Well, then that game should be reevaluated. But as it stands right now, it's a pretty bad loss for what could be the best team in the Big 12 losing to what could be the worst team in the SEC.
Perception is reality until reality is reality. And like, I know I have a feeling you feel the same way, but maybe not until the college football playoff rankings come out, because that's November. But it's so hard to have a good feeling for what any of these teams are until week 6, week 7, until they start playing conference opponents and you start seeing what they look like on film and things like that. And so like, it's fun to speculate. I enjoy speculating. And the fact that Indiana doesn't play a high level conference or non-conference game makes it hard for Hoosier fans to kind of position themselves in the conversation, which is why it is so nice that Illinois game is like front and center to start conference play. But yeah, like it's hard to be embarrassed as an Indiana fan when all I've known is losing football, and Kurt Signetti's just coming out and whacking teams left and right and being annoyed about it.
So you shouldn't be embarrassed. Now, if you want to take up for Indiana University and its athletic department and its scheduling approach, then I guess I will change my answer and say you should be embarrassed.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Kurt Signetti and the Indiana football team, the players on the team, they have no power over the schedule. They go out and play who's in front of them. So they should not have to answer to that. Now Signetti gets questioned about it, and then he stands up for his team and his conference against the SEC. But yeah, I just view that a little differently than a lot of college football fans in regards to what kind of bullets I should be taking for my program. I don't make the decisions there. So
I will say, I don't think it's an accident that you look at what they did with the non-conference schedule for the next 3 to 4 years, and then the next year after everybody stops talking about what their conference schedule or non-con looks like, they play Notre Dame. I think it is pretty strategic that they stripped the schedule and built it in a way where you can develop the program and develop vibes and have these recruiting visits and have these big offensive days and sell the program, because you're going to play at the end of the day non-conference games. And I would be stunned if after this season the Big Ten doesn't follow suit and mandate a 10th Power 5 or Power 4, however you want to determine what that SEC rule, the 9+1 that they did. I would be stunned if the Big Ten doesn't follow suit.
All right, Alec, anything else? Obviously, Indiana's got one more tune-up before the big showdown against the Illini.
Yep, we got the Larry Bird revenge game, Indiana State, this weekend. It'll be on a Friday night. Brad and I are still going tomorrow night, 8 p.m. We got merch, so check out the VOCFB shop. Indiana will be on there. I'll have an article about the NBC night game. What I was going to try and write it for tomorrow morning, but it's not going to be ready. So by Wednesday morning, that'll be out on the VOCFB.com. And yeah, we're just talking Hoosiers.
Well, we got to make sure we take this opportunity to push as many people over to the Indiana channel as possible. So YouTube is not always kind to us. We'll just say it that way, folks. So the Indiana channel, it's right here, the Voice of College Football. And basically, what is the best way to get there? I don't know if you put Indiana Voice of College Football in a search.
Yeah, I just type in... Yeah, I just search in Indiana at the Voice of College Football. Show pops right up. Goes
right to it. Otherwise, I would ask somebody to put the link in the chat. And if nobody is able to do that, I'll do it. So here goes. And the show is on Tuesday night at 8 p.m., correct?
Yep, Tuesday night, 8 p.m. And then Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. we do the recap. I'll get with Brad and talk to him this week because it is a Friday night kick. So we may be going live on Saturday instead of Sunday. So I'll talk to him and we'll talk about that tomorrow night.
All right, Alec. Appreciate you stopping by here.
Appreciate you, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. We still have a good 25 minutes to go, unless you want to keep me on here longer. We've got Michael stopping by to talk some college football. Michael.
Hey, Mark. Good evening, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing just fine. How are you?
Hanging in there. And I got to say, that quarterback's name for Oklahoma is escaping me, but he played a heck of a game Saturday night against Michigan. Not taking anything from... Yeah, I thought Underwood played a good game too, but just I think the defense just came down when they had to. Yeah, I know Purdue's 2-0 right now, and they got a tough game coming up this Saturday. But do you think it's going to be within a 21-point spread?
21-point spread for what game?
USC Purdue Saturday afternoon. This is 3:30 CBS game.
USC at Purdue, 21-point spread. Well, I think that's, as is typical of Vegas, a pretty good call. I will obviously make a prediction on the game when push comes to shove. So that's what I will do there. But yeah, I've got no definite feel about that spread. Like if you would have said it was 10, then I would say, whoa, I'll take USC. And if you would have said it was 28, then I would say, wow, I'm leaning Purdue. But Purdue's obviously played a really good football game against Ball State. Now, just based on the score. Now, I did not see more than 5 plays of these games, but the game that they played last weekend was a pretty close football game for a little while before they busted loose.
Yeah, it was back and forth. I thought, okay, here we go. It's going to be a shootout, right? Or attack meet. But like I said, my thing is, though, it would be nice. My thing is just play competitive football. Play a good game and get some Saturday and see what happens and stuff. I personally don't think it'd be within the 21. Maybe I'm wrong and stuff like that, but I'm just trying to figure out what is it. Plus, you got to remember, too, the offensive coordinator at Purdue, wasn't he Lincoln Riley's OC last year?
The who?
The offensive coordinator.
I'm trying to think who that is.
Josh somebody.
That was the offensive coordinator at USC? Boy,
I'm losing my
mind.
Last year. I'm drawing a blank.
I would think I'd be able to come up with that in a split second.
Me too, but I'm trying to...
Coordinator. Oh my goodness. Who are we talking about? Purdue offensive coordinator. You had the Texas Tech guy last. Oh, Josh Henson.
Yeah.
Josh Henson was not the offensive coordinator at
Oh, he wasn't? I thought he was.
Well, Lincoln Riley's his own offensive coordinator. I'm almost positive that Josh Henson was the offensive line coach.
Okay, my mistake. But no, but being it's a 3:30 game and stuff like that, do you think that might have something to do? Because you know how West Coast teams, when they travel out to the Midwest or East Coast, it might have some kind of effect with them.
Well, I know that a lot of people were tracking that early last season about how many teams struggled traveling at least 2 to 3 time zones. That was a big deal. Now, as the season wore on, I don't know that statistic held. I'd have to go back and look. But yeah, that's an impact right there. What time are they playing the game?
3:30.
Okay.
It's on CBS too, so
I expect that to be a tough spot in a sense for USC, but at the same time, this is their first Big Ten game, and it's not like they just got done playing one of the best teams in the league, and then they're going to play one of the best teams in the league the next week, which is the obvious trap spot. It's not that. It's the Big Ten opener. So after just annihilating 2 opponents, I would think that they would be pretty fired up to play their first conference game, especially since they went 4-5 in the Big Ten last year.
Yeah, and Purdue went 0-9 last year, and I know they're chomping at the bit to get a conference win after going 2-17 the last 2 years in the conference for Purdue.
Yes.
But no, another thing I'm trying to figure out is the Clemson Georgia Tech. Do they play this Saturday or is it next Saturday?
This Saturday, Clemson Georgia Tech. I believe that's a noon game.
And that's where we're at Clemson, or is that at?
They're playing at Georgia Tech. I'll pull up the schedule here. I got it.
Okay. Wait till you get that. Because that seems like that might be a good game Saturday.
Yeah, that should be a good ball game.
Last thing, 2 more things before I let you go. One, how competitive do you think the Alabama-Wisconsin game is going to be Saturday?
It's a great question because Wisconsin's, of course, not been overly impressive. It took them a while to get untracked against Middle Tennessee State, much like Purdue against a much weaker team. And then they didn't play well on offense the week before. And they lost their quarterback, Billy Edwards, and Danny O'Neill had to take over and going to Tuscaloosa. And I got to think Kalen DeBoer has Alabama's attention after what happened 2 weeks ago, that the next time that they're going to face a legitimate opponent, that they're going to be ready this time. I don't know what the point spread is on that game. I would guess it's like in the 21 to 24 range in Alabama's favor.
Okay. No, I was wondering stuff like that.
Yeah, I would be highly surprised if Wisconsin comes out with a win.
Okay, so I know it's Monday. So when we know your TV schedule, which games you're watching this week?
Oh, well, I can tell you right now.
Okay.
Let's see. I was about to pop this up here. So that answers your question about Georgia Tech. They're playing at home against Clemson, noon Eastern. Michael kind of humors me here because I enjoy doing this. So at noon Eastern, if I'm going to watch 2 games for sure, I'm watching Clemson, Georgia Tech, and I'm watching Wisconsin, Alabama. And as soon as one of those 2 drop off the board and become a blowout, then I'm going to kick it in with Oregon and Northwestern.
And I got a feeling that could be a bloodbath. I think Oregon's going to win by at least 35.
But you're talking about USC traveling that far. Think about Oregon traveling that far, and they're playing at noon Eastern. They're playing at 9 a.m. on their body clocks.
Yeah, fair point, Tom.
Then we go to the 3:30 window, and Georgia, Tennessee is a must. And
is that ABC or is that ESPN?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Georgia, Tennessee. Is that the ESPN or is that ABC?
It's an ABC game, Georgia, Tennessee.
Okay.
And I'm going to be locked in on Pitt and West Virginia, the backyard brawl.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I'll give your Purdue team the third look.
Okay.
Although I was shocked to see that this game was pushed down to the CW. South Florida, of course, coming off this huge game against Florida, and they beat Boise State, and Miami's number 5 in the country. I thought that this was going to get some major play. On
Same
the
here.
CW at 4:30 Eastern, South Florida at Miami.
Wow. And that's a hard thing. That's going to be a hard game to find. Because I know the Saturday night game is going to be Notre Dame and Texas A&M for you at 7:30 on NBC.
Yeah, so if I'm watching any game in prime time, I'm watching, yes, exactly. I'm watching Notre Dame and Texas A&M. And then there are some difficult choices to make, but I got to opt for Florida at LSU. LSU is a sizable favorite. It's pushing like 10 points in that game. My Buckeyes are taking on a pretty strong Ohio team that almost beat Rutgers, and then they beat West Virginia. So
Yeah,
Arkansas,
but I got a feeling that Ohio State-Ohio game is going to pretty much be like the game it was last week for Ohio State.
It's going to be what?
I got a feeling it's going to be like it was for Ohio State last week against Grambling.
No. I don't think that point spread is going to come within 30 points.
You don't think so?
No.
Maybe we'll see. But no, I was wondering something like that.
Those are always the truest words in sports. We'll see. You're
right. Now, what time is it with LSU? Is that an 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock kickoff?
I believe a 7 o'clock, 7:30 game.
Okay. Because I know sometimes in LSU they play light games and stuff. That's why I was asking.
Yeah. Vanderbilt, South Carolina is a under-the-radar, sneaky good one.
Mm-hmm. Is that SEC Network?
That's on the SEC Network. ESPN2's got Tulane hosting Duke, and Tulane beat Northwestern a couple weeks ago. And Duke's 26-point loss to Illinois, everyone that did not see the game, was not nearly as bad as the score would indicate.
Maybe, but no, I mean, they did have a hard time stopping it, especially in the fourth quarter, but I digress on that one. All right, sir. I know time's running low, short, and you have other callers. Enjoy the rest of the show, and I will catch you later. Have a good one.
Thanks for being here. I appreciate
it. Yeah. Yep.
All right, let's keep it rocking and rolling here at the Voice of College Football, and please slap me if I ever say that again. I've never said that and never
Throw
will
it
again.
away.
All right, we got David Green Shield here. What's going on?
How you doing, my friend? Yeah, just watching a little bit of this NFL game, you know. I will say McCarthy finally hit some throws tonight. You know, he looked awful for 3 quarters, but then he finally hit some throws here in the fourth quarter. Hit a couple nice throws to Jefferson.
I saw a few plays here and there. Not tonight. I didn't see anything of tonight's game. Did not know who was playing, but I saw several plays from the games yesterday.
Yeah. Oh, did you watch much NFL yesterday, Mark? I thought you were out.
Well, that's what I say. I saw several plays. I saw like 5 plays.
Just plays. Got it. Yeah.
I saw Aaron Rodgers throw a touchdown pass, and I saw a long field goal, and then I flipped on the NFL Network, and they just had kind of the scoreboard, and then they throw on some big plays, and saw some of the key plays down the stretch. Well, Emeka Buka saw both his touchdown receptions. They were both big. And then Atlanta misses the kick after Michael Penix relived his, stretch to the goal line.
It cost me, Mark. I bet the over in the game. I had over a 47, and I needed that game to go to OT.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Of course, that didn't work out as well as betting my least favorite team on Saturday night, by the way, Mark. A prediction that was given to me by the great Mark Rogers, by the way.
Hey, I had another strong day. I'm
not
apologizing for any particular picks. I'm 24-14 against the spread this year.
Why do you keep Merrill on the payroll if you're doing so well, by the way?
Well, we keep him up for backup.
For backup.
Just in case.
Jeez, I'm just saying, Mark. I mean, I mean, maybe Mark Rogers is who we need to be following here.
But,
I guess.
Michigan let me down.
Yeah, I was.
But they really didn't let me down because I enjoyed it.
By the way, can I just a couple things? I drank from some of the tears of listening to their podcast. By the way, so I do have to say that. But I got a couple of questions. Does it make you think, like, when you look at that staff up there, who is the real quarterback whisperer up there? Who's the real quarterback developer up there that's going to take, a high recruit and develop him into a high level quarterback?
Well, based on resume and track record, I thought last season, although Kirk Campbell was a pretty horrendous offensive coordinator, that he was supposed to be the quarterback developer, and he turned out to be a pretty horrendous quarterback developer, although maybe that was more Sharon Moore making bad decisions on who should play. But Chip Lindsey, I haven't really delved into his past. He's got a fine resume as an offensive coordinator, but in terms of developing that position, it's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying I'm not saying that you have to have somebody with like a Day or even Lincoln Riley track record of developing quarterbacks, but at the same time, oh boy, the Minnesota running game is going. So what I would say is I just don't see it, Mark. I mean, you got this raw talent, and then they're just trying to. I think they just thought they could play bully ball. To be real with you, Mark, they thought that maybe they were going up against an Oklahoma team that's probably got like a Big 12 front seven, and that they could just road grade over them with their line and their run game. I think that was probably the thought concepts of some of their offensive staff. At least that's what it seemed like.
Yes, and even when they discovered that wasn't going to be the case, that Sharon Moore maybe has been impacted by just thinking that just keeping a game close and relying on his defense and thinking that, and this may turn out to be an elite defense, but they didn't play like one on Saturday night. But thinking that if he's got an elite defense, if he just plays complete kneel down football on offense, that somehow somebody's going to do something either for his team or somebody's going to do something stupid, which they did a few times on the Oklahoma side. Otherwise, this should have been a
blowout.
Yeah, because Oklahoma was decidedly the better team.
And I do wonder how good Oklahoma is, Mark. You know what I mean? I have to say that. I do wonder how good Oklahoma is this year, especially with that SEC schedule. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, to separate them from their schedule, I think they're a pretty darn good football team. But, they could be 8-4 this year with that schedule.
Mateer's a playmaker, though, Mark. I think he's a quarterback. He's one of those quarterbacks that can make some plays outside the structure, rip some pretty good throws.
Yeah.
He did have the one bad throw on the interception there in the first half. But I saw him make some really good high-level throws, I thought. And, if they're a little bit better, well, that's going to help Brent Venables' job security, by the way, so. But, yeah, I just thought you're probably right. They thought they could keep the game close, maybe get a turnover, win the game with their run game, and, and just play bully ball, maybe hide their quarterback, let them throw short passes. And they threw those. They love that side-to-side passes, by the way.
Yeah, well, that's part of them playing scared.
Yeah.
And then even again, when they got into the red zone, not largely on their own merit, but got into the red zone a few times. Now, one time they did. Now they got a gift of an interception on what appeared live to be a John Mateer throw that just sailed on him and was behind the receiver. I saw Aaron Murray dissect that play, and he actually thought that the receiver made a bad read on the safety, and that he should have went down the seam. But anyway, regardless of it, it was a gift to this,
So was the roughing the punter, by the way. That was terrible.
That was a bad call. Yeah. That either, Oklahoma gets the ball at midfield.
Yeah.
But then they got to play an extra set of defense, and Michigan moves it a little bit. And, they get pinned deeper. So, but I was just going to make the point that when Michigan, whether by their own merit. Donovan McCulley did make a ridiculous catch at one point. Did get in the fringe red zone area about the 25-yard line. They were like no threat to get to the end zone. Like they didn't even come close to getting to the end zone. They were just like okay with kicking field goals. And our Michigan man who calls us up pointed out, don't really remember this sequence, but it doesn't seem to make sense that on a 3rd and 6, they run the ball, get a nice gain to set up a 4th and 1.5.
Yes.
And then they kick the field goal.
Yeah, to cut a 21-7 game to 21-10, which is like worthless. Yeah. I agree with his point there. Yeah. I mean, what's the point of doing that? Yeah, it's fair.
Yeah, the odds of you making a first down on 3rd and 6 against an Oklahoma defense are probably 10%.
Yeah.
So basically, you're running the ball to set up the shorter play to go for it.
Yeah.
It seems to be the standard thinking these days, but not to Sharon Moore.
I do wonder if their defense is as good as it's been the last few years, Mark. I mean, I know they, have been pretty consistent defense, even though when they've lost key players in the past, but, still losing those defensive tackles and Will Johnson. I mean, those are some losses for them,
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
Question for you about South Florida. Is South Florida for real as the non-Power 5 that could contend for the playoff spot? Are you a believer yet, or do you still have to see this week?
Well, if you just look on the surface and see who they beat, I still have to believe that Boise State's going to have a fine season in the Mountain West Conference. They may not be prime Boise State, but they did bring back their starting quarterback and a lot of production aside from Ashton Genty. So Boise State they were in that mix of 3 or 4 teams that were supposed to make the playoff out of the group of 5. So they were still supposed to be that team. And I saw quite a bit of that game. Now, the part that I saw, Boise State was playing just about as well as South Florida. They blew them out in the second half. But I did watch. I got intrigued with the South Florida score on Saturday. So it was about mid to late second quarter, and I thought, I'm going to watch this game. I got a hunch here that this is going to get good. Because it was like 9-3 or 6-3, something like that at that point. I can't say that South Florida really looked that good. I thought it was more Florida not looking dynamic on offense at all. Now Florida they were kind of caught in between from a clock management standpoint on their last drive. Florida gets the football. So one of the Grammaticas missed a 58-yard field goal that would have taken the lead. So South Florida misses the 58-yard field goal. So Florida's got great field position at their own 40. There's about 2:45 on the clock. So there's too much time to think that you can just, you obviously, I don't remember the timeout situation, but that they could just run it out unless, of course, they just kept getting first downs. So Florida, instead of running once, they just threw the ball. Boom, 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 threw the ball. And they may have completed one pass for like 5 yards, but they didn't get a first down. So boom, they're punting, and they chewed up all of like 13 seconds off the clock. So they basically did themselves no favors. They did pin South Florida deep, but there's a swing pass out to the left or the right flat. Florida defenders are just eating grass, missing this guy. He gains like 38 yards. They had a spitting incident at the end of that play that kicked the Florida defensive lineman out the game, gave him another 15 yards. They had a 15-yard pass interference where they kind of bailed out Florida, where it was 3rd and 10 or 12, and they should have been off the field. And so, yeah, I give South Florida a ton of credit, but I don't think this Florida football team's really that good.
Well, see, I was, buying their end of the year success last year, and I thought that Lagway would kind of build on that this year and that they would be a little bit better football team. Although I was still not necessarily a Napier fan. I got a prop bet at the beginning of the year saying that they were going to go 6.5 wins this year, over on the 6.5 wins. We'll see about that. But I do think that South Florida, from what I understand, don't they have a transfer quarterback that's pretty solid, if I'm not mistaken?
The backup quarterback?
No, the starter at South Florida.
Byron Brown. He's been there.
Oh, he's been okay. I thought he
he's
might
been
have
their
been a
starting
transfer.
quarterback for like 3 years now. Now he may have originally transferred. I don't know, but he's been there.
He's a pretty solid player. I saw some of the highlights of the game.
Yeah,
He's pretty good.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I'd be interested to see if they could be the non-Power 5 team. By the way, who did you pick in your playoff? Did you pick a non-Power 5 to make the playoffs this year, Mark?
I picked Toledo.
Wow. The Rockets this year.
I left it up to the chat. I had the chat pick it. I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah. I do not worry myself with group of 5 teams. Just don't have the time to deal with it. So,
yeah, I think we're gonna have a little bit better docket than we had this week, but last week, Mark. I mean, week 1, I think was far better than week 2, just as far as what we've got as far as the slate of games.
Sure.
So I'm excited about Georgia, Tennessee. I want to see how good Georgia's offense is this year, especially after it was really down last year. Talked to Uncle Lou. They weren't big fans of Monken down there. I'm sorry, Bobo, after what he did with that offense.
Yep.
So going to Rocky Top's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Well, they won 2 national championships. And the second national championship, their offense was pretty darn good.
Well, yeah, but remember, they had an experienced quarterback, and Monken was running that offense, though, too,
Oh, Monken was in play by then?
Yeah, Monken was their OC, and then Bobo eventually took over as their OC after that. Because Monken's, I believe, with the Ravens right now.
I thought Bobo was their offensive coordinator before that.
Yeah, I think before Monken was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I believe on both the 21 and 22 teams, it was Monken that was their OC.
Okay.
So.
All right, David.
All right. Well, going to be a good weekend of college football, and I'm looking forward to it. So I'll check back with you later in the week, my friend.
Good to see you, man.
Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. I would love to break down the numbers between the SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, and the Big 12. Just briefly here. Big Ten. Nice win, Illinois going to Duke. Forget the final score. Is much closer than the final score, but Illinois did kick it in the fourth quarter, 45-19. Iowa loses a big game against Iowa State. Not a good look for the Big Ten, but one of those typical down to the wire Cyhawk games, down to the final seconds. And then the real disappointment for the Big Ten was Michigan, Oklahoma, and just not competing. They didn't lose like a 24-21 game down to the wire. They were kind of handled the entire game, and it was close. Like, it was never a blowout. Like, I had to watch the game all the way through because it was still 21-13 midway through the fourth quarter, but Michigan was being handled. So not good performance by the Big Ten. Everything else was pretty much non-existent, non-consequential. The Big 12 has been awful this year. Baylor did come through in double overtime against SMU. TCU had a big win against North Carolina, which we'll see how good Carolina and Bill Belichick are, but they blew them out. So good for TCU, not only winning on the road against North Carolina, but they won by 5 touchdowns. Other than that, the Big 12, Kansas State hasn't looked good. Of course, Colorado lost to Georgia Tech, and these losses this past weekend. West Virginia loses at Ohio, and Arizona State with a huge loss against Mississippi State. And if Mississippi State turns out, in fact, to be the worst team in the SEC, and Arizona State is the best team in the Big 12 or close to it, that is going to be a bad loss for the Big 12. Now, the ACC got a lot of pub there in week 1. People were pumping their fists in ACC country for Florida State and Miami. And true, 2 enormous big-time wins for them. Clemson did look marginal against LSU. They didn't get blown out. It was a close game, but they lost 17-10. And then this performance against Troy, which I did not see any of it, but they did score the last 27 points. So you're going to have those hiccups by the big schools. Otherwise, Virginia Tech's lost twice to SEC schools. And Vanderbilt to go in there and score the last 34 points of the game. They were down 20-10. They scored 34 consecutive points to close out the game in Blacksburg. Duke loses big. Again, they were better than the final score, but still they lost by 4 touchdowns. And do we have any other games of consequence from the ACC? Syracuse almost lost to UConn. That was an overtime game. So my overall rating, even though there's 2 really big wins for the ACC is the ACC. Boston College lost to Michigan State. Decent win. Not really for the Big Ten, but for Michigan State. They lost that game to Boston College last year, and that was a nail-biter here, 42-40. And otherwise for the ACC, Georgia Tech won on the road against Colorado. And that's about all that comes to mind. And again, if we're just looking at non-conference matchups, and this is going to be not the last week. Of course, we got the ACC against the SEC at the end of the season, but this is really week 3 is kind of the last weekend of numerous non-conference games. So if we look at this, non-conference games to put on your radar to evaluate these conferences would be Alabama, Wisconsin. Alabama, a top 3 to 5 team in the SEC, something in that range. Wisconsin, much worse than that. So I don't know if that's a fair judgment of the SEC and the Big Ten. I don't think it is. Of course, the 2 got together last year. We're talking about an Alabama team that just missed the playoffs. And we're talking about a bad Wisconsin team that went 3-6 in the Big Ten. And then Texas Tech, Oregon State. Again, Pitt, West Virginia. That's the Big 12 against the ACC. And there aren't too many out there. A lot of group of 5 games. The SEC is starting play with Florida, LSU, and Arkansas, Ole Miss, and also Vandy, South Carolina. Other non-conference games, really nothing else besides Minnesota Cal. So there's an ACC and Big Ten matchup. All right, appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We got a triple header from me on Tuesday. No, you got a quadruple header from me on Tuesday. 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Iowa. 6 p.m. is the Big Ten. 7 p.m. is Florida State. And 10 p.m. Eastern Time is the national show right here at the Voice of College Football. We'll see you then.